Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dagger, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Gojko Adzic. And I tried that. I'm not sure if I'm right. We'll get it straightened out.
Close enough. Thank you.
Okay, he is a strategic software delivery consultant who works with ambitious teams to improve the quality of their software products and processes. He specializes in Agile and lean quality improvement, in particular Agile testing, specification by example, and behavior-driven development. Gojko, thanks for joining me. And I, for one, have way too many of your books. I want to talk about the future with you a little bit because you reflect on that well. And I think at the Agile Prague conference, you were interviewed and discussed what's next for Agile. Could you share that answer and tell us what is next?
That's a really interesting question. I don't remember what I said at Agile Prague, but let me try and come up with something new now. And maybe if somebody finds the video from Agile Prague, it talks about completely the opposite. But a lot of what I see happening in terms of, let's say, what's for Agile is that there's this whole thing where the bottleneck has moved away from software delivery. I think lots of organizations are at a point where further optimizing how they do software is going to give them, how they produce software is going to give them diminishing returns because they already do it good enough so it's no longer the bottleneck there. What I mean by that is most clients I've worked with, say 10 years ago as a consultant, they really struggled to get software out of the door. People that were asking for software features were outside of the loop. They were asking for stuff that would be released 6 months too late, and everybody was disconnected from that process. Now, what's happened, I think, with most companies these days, of course, there will still be laggards, but most software teams today have the technical capability of churning out software every couple of weeks. The technical part of the pipeline is no longer the bottleneck. The bottleneck has now moved and the ball is now in the court. The ball is now with people who are asking for stuff to be delivered to them. And what lots of organizations are realizing that now the bottleneck's moved, they're just asking for too many stupid things. And it's very, very difficult to ask for the right things in a way. It's very difficult to figure out which of the 5 million things we could do with our product are actually going to achieve any impact and which are just a waste of time. That's where I think the bottleneck is moving. So Agile, in a sense, what's next for Agile depends on what your definition of Agile is, because there's a couple of competing opinions there. One opinion is that it's about how we deliver software. And if that's what we're talking about, then we've pretty much solved that problem now. For anybody who wants to learn how to solve the problem, that is a solved problem. And the bottleneck is somewhere else. For people that want to hire a big name consultancy that has a massive poster that looks like a train line that has 500 things you exactly need to do to be agile, well, those people are wasting money anyway. But anybody who actually wants to learn how to deliver good software, I think there's a ton of information out there. The critical question now is, what do we actually want to build? And I think, in a sense, we're coming back to full circle to stuff that was a problem, 30, 40 years ago. I know that Fred Brooks wrote that the biggest problem in software development is deciding exactly what to build. So that was true 30, 40 years ago. And I think, we've come back full circle back to that.
I think that's brilliant. And I have to add something because I'm a lean guy in, lean manufacturing. And you just about explained how I sort of view lean right now. We had lean manufacturing, and faster, better, cheaper is table stakes this day. If you're not doing it, you're not in business, okay?
Yeah, that's a hygienic factor. That's, you have to do it, and otherwise it's just you can't compete.
Yeah, now we have two ideas of lean, kind of that lean startup and the traditional lean side. But what it's all circled back to is sort of Deming in the beginning of lean back there, okay? And where we kind of lost some of that systems type thinking, and we even the Senge stuff and that casual loops and everything stuff. It's kind of circled all back to that now, where what you're saying in Agile is that here it is, it's circling back to a more of a systems perspective. Is that a fair analogy?
I think Agile always had a systems perspective.
Okay.
If you look at the early stuff that people were writing about, it always had a systems perspective. It's just that the system was smaller than the entire product.
Okay.
And in effect, a lot of the early Agile works assumed that you had somebody who knows exactly what they want and knows exactly, when they want it and things like that. And the question was how to map a well-defined business problem to irregular and non-deterministic software delivery, where I think what's happened over the last 15 years in the market generally, we've moved away from well-defined problems. We've reached a part where software is relatively easy to churn out. It's relatively easy to distribute. It's very cheap to distribute. The internet has, changed a lot of stuff over the last 15 years, how we operate software, how we run things. So we're getting to the point where software is now eating the world. It's everywhere, but the stuff that the software needs to solve is a lot less well-defined. 15 years ago, you'd send a business analyst into a warehouse to poll people who are managing stuff on paper forms, and they would map a well-defined process to something that needs to be solved in software. That doesn't exist anymore. Those kind of software systems have been implemented 15 years ago. I don't know anybody who's working on that now. Everybody's working on some, exploring new mobile stuff, doing this, doing that, and very, very few people are now automating well-defined processes. I think that kind of stuff was already done, and the software that's been done today is a lot more, I guess, experimental from the business side of things than it is from the delivery side of things. The business models have changed significantly over the last 10, 15 years. It's no longer possible to sell software as software. If you look at what's happening in the market, 10 or 15 years ago, you would buy a box. I remember buying boxes of software like this with, floppy disks inside or CDs inside with a big book. You'd get a book how to configure your operating system and things like that. And that was done once a year or once every 2 or 3 years. You'd pay $100 for that, $150 or something like that, where now people are expecting to get an operating system for free. You cannot sell operating systems anymore. And that's completely changing how we do business models. Look at companies like Zynga, for example. In 2007 or 8, they were the first to figure out that you can't really sell video games for what they're worth anymore, but you can get people to pay you $2 to buy diamonds in virtual games to get the crops to grow faster or something like that. And then they killed the playability of the games. And there you have this completely new games industry that's not about making games that are fun to play. It's about making games that milk people's $1 or $2 over every 2 weeks, which is just stupid because, they've killed the playability of the games and those companies are now struggling. So there's a lot around kind of how business models are changing, how customer expectations are changing, how what we can sell is changing. And I think that's why software is a lot more experimental, given the fact that you can distribute software over the internet now so quickly, and that instead of buying a box every year, people expect to get updates every day or, whenever, that nobody wants to pay for updates anymore. So companies have to figure out how do we actually maintain our software. And one of the things I think is happening now in the mobile software industry is mobile software and particularly mobile apps are coming very, very close to the literal definition of a Ponzi scheme. Because mobile app platforms like Apple and Google are limiting how you can sell apps. You can't sell subscriptions. You can only sell an app for a couple of dollars, and the race to the bottom has gotten mobile apps to either be free or cost only a few bucks, which means that once somebody pays you $2.99, they expect that you will support them for the rest of their life, and you will update that app for the rest of their life, and that's not economically sustainable. So mobile apps today have to finance the development and maintenance for previous users from new purchases. And that's a pyramid. So it's when you have a economic system where more and more people need to come on board to give you money to finance people who came in earlier, that's a Ponzi scheme. The biggest software market now is effectively non-sustainable. That's why the mobile app platforms are a graveyard. And I think all of that is now changing how and what we need to build and how we're going to market it, how we're going to sell it. Developing a mobile app is no longer a problem. There's a ton of other problems. As you said, the lean startup tries to answer and a lot of other things try to answer. So if you take the kind of Deming approach and the Goldratt approach, the bottleneck, the critical capacity constraint is no longer in software, it's somewhere else. And the fact that development and maintenance of the software is now a Ponzi scheme means that we have to be very, very careful what we actually put into the software, because we need to make sure that it doesn't kill us in maintenance costs long term. From a systems thinking perspective, the interesting questions are not at all anymore in how we organize the process of software delivery. Maybe in 10 years' time, once all these new business models are in place and once we start dealing with some completely different type of software again, the ball moves back to kind of how we deliver software, because then software delivery is not quick enough. But at the moment, I think unless you're a big company that's really struggling to get the software out of the door, that's really kind of not where people need to optimize anymore.
You enjoyed the conversation very much, but we got to end it somewhere, okay? And I think that this is a good place. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you and to stay up to speed with what you're talking about?
I speak at lots of conferences, so find me at a conference. My website is gojko.net. It's Gojko with a J. Probably the best place to keep up to date.
You're on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. All the links are on the website. It's very difficult to pronounce a Twitter link, especially for kind of a Slavic name, and get people to actually understand it. But if you have a website for the podcast, I'm sure you can include that.
I'll include the link in there, and I definitely want to thank you for all your time and the knowledge that you've shared. I had a great time.
It was a pleasure.
This podcast will be available on the Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 blog site. So I want to thank everyone for listening.
Thanks.